Hello, I'm Colleen Reynolds, teaching Art 127 with Western Nevada College. This video lecture will be on the value of watercolor. It's lesson number 2 in the series. So what we'll cover this time is value terms. We'll talk about the properties of pigment, and again we're focusing on value this time. We'll give you some more general terms to be familiar with. We'll discuss 2 new painting methods. We'll give you some example value watercolor painters. Show you some chart examples, as well as some example monochromatic paintings that you may gain some ideas for doing your own painting. And finally, we'll give you a preview of the next lesson. So as a reminder, the properties of pigment is kind of our overview of the course. We've already discussed hue, which is the very specific color name for a pigment. Value is what we're going to focus on today. It's the range from light to dark. In future lessons, lesson 3, we'll talk about temperature and intensity, 2 properties that are interconnected but also independent. We'll talk about transparency and staining quality in lesson 5, and we'll discuss the granulation property in lesson 6. This little color chart here shows you all the different properties charted into a color wheel with 6 primary colors and 6 secondary colors, and those are actually 2 pigments. So let's talk about the value of watercolor. So again, value is the range from light to dark. We're talking within one color. So if we take yellow, we have a dark yellow, a medium yellow, and a light yellow. But we can also we need to understand value between colors. So for instance, yellow, red, and blue, which is the lightest and which is the darkest? Well, the yellow tends to be the lightest. In this case, probably this blue is the darkest. But this blue is not as dark as the reds. So some reds are darker than some blues, and so on. In this image, you can see perhaps why we care about watercolor. So using value both within a color and between colors can create a sense of drama and contrast in a painting. It also gives us a sense of distance. This rock appears closer than this rock because it's darker, and also dimension. This feels like it has 3 dimensions rather than just one-dimensional or 2-dimensional flat shape. So we use value for both of those reasons. So some general terms that we want to be familiar with is a tonal range. So when we create a range of light to dark within a color, we call it within one color, we call that a tonal range. In one of our methods, we'll want to create a tonal range of color. 2 other terms you want to be familiar with are figure and ground. So the figures in a painting are the positive shapes or forms. So perhaps in this painting that would be the tree line. And ground means the background elements. So the sky, perhaps this distant mountain range. Those would be considered the background elements. And then 2 other terms we need to understand is shape and how is it the same and different than a form. So shapes have 2 dimensions, so height and width. So a circle would be a shape, a rectangle would be a shape, and a form has 3 dimensions. So now we're adding that depth to the shape. So if instead of a circle, now we'll have a sphere. In order to depict 3 dimensions on a 2-dimensional surface, we need to have value. We want to work the light to dark, and we want to see how light hits an object. So we need value in order to depict that. Another term you want to become familiar with is glazing. This is where we're painting transparently, color over color. When we paint layers, we increase the value or make the value darker. And we can also create a new color. So if we put blue on top of yellow, we create green, for instance. Typically when we glaze, we let the underlayer dry completely and then paint over the top of it with the wet onto a dry surface again. For your final exercise, you're going to create a monochromatic harmony painting. So a monochromatic harmony means a creative work that has or appears to have one color dominance. You can use more than one color, but it tends to have a dominant one color. Like this painting has more colors in it, but the green is a dominant. It feels like a one color painting. All right, so some painting methods that we're going to learn this time are flat washing, and you can see an example of a green flat wash over here. This is a wash of colors or colors with one value, so we're going to have the pigment strength the same throughout. And we're also going to create a graded wash of color. So that's one color or one pigment with a range of values. This is a tonal range. So a graded wash creates a tonal range from dark blue to light blue. We're going to learn how to do that. You're going to watch videos on this, on all these techniques. And finally, glazing is painting transparently color over color, as I said, and you're going to increase the value with each layer. So in this painting here, I'll talk about it when we get into a later slide. So here are some value painters that I admire. Christy Grusendorf is one of them, and you can click that link hopefully and get to her website. But she tends to paint in layers. Starts with the light layers and works to the dark layers, as you can see, and those create distance and focus for us. And this painter is an Australian painter, Joseph Zbukvic. He is probably one of the most renowned watercolor artists in the world today, painting today. And you can see this feels like a monochromatic painting to me, kind of a gray-green. Although there's other colors in it, you probably used a lot of colors to create that tone. You can see it feels like a gray tone monochromatic painting. He's using a little pops of the red in order to create focus. And you can see value creates a sense of distance. It also creates a sense of where to look. Where does this artist want me to look? This is a focal point. You can set that up by contrasting dark against light. This is another painting. He's a California painter, Thomas Schaller. Again, he calls himself the painter of light, but he creates focus by putting the lightest light against the darkest dark in his focal area. He also creates a sense of distance. You know these wonderful calligraphy stroke trees are close to us because of how dark they are. So darker colors come forward, lighter colors appear further away. So for your first exercise, you're going to create a value chart. You're going to evaluate colors between colors, the value. So the blue is darker than the red, is darker than this blue, and this, all of those are darker than the yellow, and the lightest is this yellow. You'll have a video to watch that takes you through the entire process from creating the chart to the last painting swatch. And then you're also going to create a monochromatic painting. This is an example, but you're going to incorporate your theme. So here's a couple of examples of monochromatic paintings that might give you some ideas on how you might incorporate your theme. This is a much more simple painting that I did using the flat wash technique that you're going to learn in watching your videos. Created a flat wash in the background and then slowly built up the shapes of value, and finally from light to mid-tone to finally building up the darks. But you don't have to do it that way. This is a painting by an artist, Daniel Marshall, and this is a painting by Pat Howard that really gives the sense of monochromatic, one color painting. This is kind of a yellowish brown. It feels like there's other colors in there, but it has a monochromatic dominance. So in summary then, by the end of this lesson, you will understand the importance of value terms that we went over. Know that value is a range from light to dark. What is figure? What is ground? What's a wash? What is a flat wash versus a graded wash? What is a shape versus a form? You'll also understand and apply the concept of color value to a watercolor painting. Why is it important to understand value? We want to create a sense of distance, we want to create a sense of dimension, and we want to create a sense of drama. You're going to be able to view and examine example watercolor painters and apply the concepts into your own work or use them as a creative starting point. You're going to complete a color value chart and paint a monochromatic painting. So for the next lesson then, we're going to talk about watercolor properties of temperature and intensity. They go hand in hand, but they are very different. They're hardly inseparable. So on the painting over here, we're really using the concepts of temperature to create bright, intense violets. We're going to bring in some new methods, wet on dry and wet into wet. Actually, we're going to be doing variegated washes, so I need to update this slide. We're going to discuss the art concepts of the rule of thirds and complementary and analogous color harmony. We're going to discuss cold pressed paper and why it's appropriate for washes. And we're going to do some more charting, a color temperature wheel, as well as a secondary color mixing chart. And finally, your final exercise will be a temperature layered painting that incorporates your theme. So that's it, the lecture for the value of watercolor. Have fun painting. Please don't hesitate to ask questions.